like to introduce our next speaker. You don't need to ask me any questions, but you can ask the others. Mine was just an intro to the rest of them, really. Now I'd like to introduce Andrew. Some of you know Andrew, I can see. Andrew is from Boost Coaching, and that's good. He's doing really good. He's got his pamphlets up there and some forms there if you want to put your name down for him to contact you. Andrew's background was originally in swimming, competitive swimming. Then he moved into triathlon over 10 years ago and became a pro triathlete and went up to Kona as a pro triathlete and has gone into tri-coaching. I've got a lot of time for Andrew. I like his manner and his coaching. He's based at the corporate gym at 151 Queen Street. And tonight we've asked Andrew to focus on the swimming sector. So welcome to Andrew.
Cool, thank you very much. Hey, thanks very much for coming on. It is really nice to see a number of familiar faces that I've had a chance to work with in the swimming pool, and I've got a couple of my own people that I've worked with from a coaching perspective as well. So yeah, anyway, it's good to see. I was going to, I had a few thoughts going, well, Verna's saying we sort of put ourselves up on a pedestal. I'm not really sort of, I raced professionally. I made this much money. Professional triathlon is sometimes a bit more like a lifestyle than a source of making income. But I started off just like you, and I read things on the internet and trying to figure my own path out. And just like what Verna said, I then invested in a coach to sort of support me to try and shortcut that journey, and I must admit I learned a lot from the coaches that I worked with, and also then I started working with a few people part-time, and I guess it's been over the last 3 years that I've sort of been doing this on a full-time capacity, and then the swim coaching, which obviously I'm doing, which I'm here to talk to you about today. So the key things that I'm going to talk to you about is firstly about swim technique, and swim technique's obviously pretty hard to kind of give you a lot of information on without taking you into the pool and telling you, because you'll be slightly different. But I'm going to touch on that. I'm going to talk a little bit about the open water swimming versus pool swimming. Have a quick conversation about some of the equipment and gear, and then we'll talk about some of your event day preparation. I've got quite a lot of information on my website as well, so if you do want to have a look there, there's quite a lot of resources there that I'll touch on, which you can probably go back and read as you go along. Okay, swimming technique. Right, everyone take a deep breath. Do you run when you're holding your breath? Do you cycle when you're holding your breath? But most of you, or a lot of you, will hold your breath while you're swimming, okay? And as you do that, every time that you take a deep breath, there's a law of diminishing return. You might start off all right on over 25 metres, first 2 or 3 strokes, you can handle it without blowing or exhaling out. Okay, so if there's one thing you want to take away is you want to slowly learn how to exhale your air underwater so you can create a nice relaxed body in the water. The thing that you'll do as you do that is you'll learn to sort of get a nice rhythm with your breathing. Okay, if you hold your breath, you'll tend to create a bit of panic and anxiety as you do that, and I'm going to touch on that as we go along. As you learn to breathe, you'll also, people will talk about bilateral breathing versus, just breathing to one side, and optimally, I'd say yes, you want to learn how to bilateral breathe. So if you've got an opportunity and then you're going to start off as you are now, yes, do try and learn to breathe bilaterally. I mean, you're pretty lucky in Taupo that, the conditions, they're pretty constant, so, you might be able to get away with just breathing to one side. But as you go and practice this in the open water, especially if you're based in Auckland and you're out there, you can guarantee that you're going to have conditions where if you breathe to your favoured side and that's the only way you can do, you're going to have water coming in your mouth. Okay, so if you can get into the rhythm or learning how to breathing bilaterally, it will definitely help you. When you learn to breathe, your head position plays a really key part in how you can breathe. And one of the things that, these points that I'm sort of touching on now are kind of what I do with a lot of people when they first come in for their swim lessons. And when you understand your head position, which is the water around about your hairline when you're sitting in the water here, then it's much, much easier for you to simply turn your head to breathe than if you're facing up and looking towards the end of the pool, or you've got your chin tucked into your chest. Because every time that you need to take that breath, if your chin is down here, somehow you have to lift your head really high to take that breath. Or if your face is here, you've somehow got to turn your head really far right to get your mouth out of the water again to take that breath. Whereas in a very neutral head position, you're going to find that you can simply just roll your head to the side and take your breath. Okay, and that might sound like it's pretty simple, but for most people, this can be pretty challenging, because the thing that goes wrong with most people's stroke is around when they're breathing. So when they take a breath, they push down on the water, they change their kick technique, they stop their kick, they do so many different things in order to try and help them to take in oxygen. Because when we're in the water, so many things change, and it's so simple when we're out running or biking, because we can take a breath whenever we want it, but we can't in the water. And therefore everything that you've ever done will just change. Your reactions, you panic, you just need to take that breath. So by understanding your head position, it's pretty important. But how do we get to getting that optimal head position is around body position. And when you see a really good swimmer in the water, you kind of go, man, I wish I could swim like that. You know, he makes it look so effortless. And you kind of wonder, well, what's he doing differently to what I'm doing? And often they're so relaxed in the water that their body position stays so nice and high. So are you fighting the water, or are you relaxed in the water? And again, when I see people first jumping in for their swim lesson, they're usually, they're really fighting it. Often males more so than females. Males are usually using their strength, their muscle to try and get their way to the end, which is both exhausting and pretty inefficient. Whereas females often can be a little bit more relaxed in the water, but maybe need to sometimes use a little bit of the muscle to create some power in the water, but using it at the right times. So often what I do with a swimmer when they start off is I just get them to float into like a starfish position on the water. And as soon as they do that, they tend to relax and kind of just hold their body near the surface. Now often people will sink, and I'll just say kick your legs a little bit to get your hips up, keep your legs up, and as they do that, then they find that they're actually sitting there quite easily. We stand up, we take a breath, we do the same thing again. You float, then I just get them to bring their legs together and I get them to kick, and they're sitting right on the surface of the water with very little effort. Then we do the same again and we start bringing your arms, and we find you've got a very relaxed body position without too much effort. And again, during this, I suppose we're trying to work on the kick technique, which is the next part. And if you've got the kick technique working well with the body position, then this sort of just seems to work quite nicely. Kicking from the hip versus kicking from the knee, a lot of people will try to kick, and it's more like they're riding a bike than they're swimming. So we're looking at really nice long legs, relaxed ankles, I say toes slightly inverted, sort of brushing by each other as you're kicking, keeping that kick relatively low so your kick isn't breaking the surface of the water. And if you can keep it, I generally recommend like a 6-beat kick, which means that you kick 3 times per arm stroke. If you keep that level of consistency, then you'll find that you've got a really nice body position in the water. Now this all seems very simple, and I know that well, it is complicated, and complicated in the sense that every time when you're swimming, you can usually only focus on 2 or 3 things at once, and you've got to get those things working. And while I'm standing here trying to talk to you about these things, I'm bullet pointing. This is a 30-40 minute sort of swim lesson to try and help somebody to understand it. But if you can get that body position working, then everything kind of stems from that. And I call it my swim basics, and you can look on my website, and it's just boostcoaching/swim basics, and you can learn all about those different areas if you want to. As I say, with that kick, it plays a big part in lift, balance, propulsion, and consistency. So if you get that kick working for you right, and even though you're going to have a wetsuit on, so you're going to float a little bit higher, I still think the kick plays a big part in helping you to be a better swimmer. Okay. Any questions on that? I know there's probably lots, but just quickly on swim technique. No? Cool. All right. Perfect. open water swimming versus pool swimming, all right? So the change from the open water environment, or the open water to the open water environment from the pool can often be a little bit daunting. And as Verna rightly pointed out, so many people end up with panic attacks, very anxious, and feel like their wetsuits is choking them. And so, look, what I'd recommend is, if you're going to go into the open water for the first time, jump in with a group of people. There's heaps of clubs, there's organised groups, there's swim clinics, there's all these types of things that you can kind of go and just familiarise yourself with an open water environment, but I wouldn't go in there by yourself, okay? Just get into the water with other people to start off with, all right? The thing that you're going to firstly notice, well, especially in Auckland, not maybe so much in Taupo, but the water clarity is a big issue. Okay, so in the pool you can obviously see exactly where you're going. You can watch a nice happy black line as you go up and down, up and down, up and down. In the sea, you don't quite get that. So, there's, often just by not being able to see where you can go, then that'll often create a level of panic, a level of anxiety with just not being able to see in front of you. So, overcoming this can be challenging. You'll get more and more used to it. But then again, you go into Lake Taupo and you have these beautiful clear water, and you suddenly get maybe a sense of depth, and that might create a different level of anxiety. I mean, I can tell you in Hawaii, it was pretty cool to see a turtle floating by and the odd dolphin, that you kind of, hopefully it wasn't a shark, it certainly gives you a little bit of a panic, but these are the things that people might worry about, but swim in a group of people and it definitely makes it a whole lot better. The sighting obviously in the open water is very important, and so as you learn to swim in the open water environment, learning to lift your head and sight every somewhere between 6 to 12 strokes, you'll definitely then start to know where you're going. When you first come into a course and again in most of your training, you'll probably be doing events that are based off the East Coast Bays, and you want to learn about what you're actually looking beyond the buoys, and so the buoys are one part of it, but there's Rangitoto Island and things, and you might sort of get an idea when you're standing at the beach going, okay, I'm taking this buoy line, but where is that buoy in relation to me standing at the beach on Rangitoto? And it might be it's a little bit right to the cone, and so that's the direction that you're going. Because not always you're going to be heading in the right direction, and you want to get an idea of where that buoy will be when you lift your head up. And these little waves, they might seem like little things at first of all, but when you're in the water, this is your head height and this is your eyes. Sometimes those little waves might make it a little bit harder to see those buoys, but when you've got big objects at the back end or big objects behind you, then it does make it much, much easier to sight. In Taupo, there's some really obvious ones, and again, I've chucked a video up on my website that you can have a look at, which kind of then helps you to understand the IRONMAN course and some sighting things that you can look for. So I won't go into that, but just maybe go on there and have a quick look at that, because it can be quite helpful to understand where those sighting points are if you can't directly see those buoys. Obviously, in the pool, we can stand up whenever we like, and the ground's usually not too far away. There's a lane rope we can grab hold of, we can do whatever we like. And in the open water, especially in an event situation, we have to be pretty aware of, we probably can't stand up and touch the ground, but if you do choose to stop, you could have 500 people behind you, okay? And they can just go straight into you without knowing that you're there, okay? And so, again, being aware, of the environment that you're in. If you're going to stop, I try to tell people, try not to, but roll onto your back, take a breath, do some backstroke, kick, keep moving forward. But people will be aware of you, but if you simply stop, there will be no splashing, there'll be nothing around, and it's quite easy for somebody to come hurtling head on into you, and your head's sitting right on the surface of the water. So I'm not saying this to scare you, but I'm just saying, just be aware. I see so many beginner swimmers just not really aware of their environment and the people that are around them. So if you can just take that awareness or make that aware, then it certainly make it safer for everyone. Obviously, again with you know, the open water, you've got water movement. Okay, so you've got waves, wind, tide, and you know, and often in rough conditions. So all of these sort of things that you're going to have to take into account when you transition from the pool to the open water. Again, because most of your training will be out in sea, you know, often these events will leave in waves, and it's cool to stand there and watch how people go as they head out towards that first buoy. You'll certainly know which way the tide's moving, because there'll be suddenly a big loop of people kind of drifting out this way, and you go, well, you know, when you choose to start your race, then make sure that your line is slightly harder to the left of the buoy if it's here, rather than getting drifting around, because you're going to end up swimming. You know, if you want to swim 2,500 meters in a 2K swim, then, you know, be my guest. But if you want to try and make that as efficient as possible, then, you know, try and get the straightest line towards the buoy. The other thing when you come into your race is it's self-seeding most of the time, and so you get to choose where you want to start at the on the start line, and it's interesting, and one of my guys, Murphy's here today, and he was at Ironman New Zealand. You know, he was going to be, swimming wasn't his most favourite sport. Would that be true, Murphy? And but it's interesting to see, like, he was pretty similar to another of the girls that I worked with, and at the end of the day, Murphy took a very conservative approach to the swim, and and that was the right decision for him. The girl that I was working with, she took a slightly more aggressive type of approach to the swim, and she put herself right at the back of the main group. The time difference at the end of this, if you're worried about time, was about 30 minutes, okay? But they're actually quite similar. They swam King of the Bays a few weeks afterwards, and there is about 2-3 minutes difference in their times. But the pull of the people as they move down the course is quite significant if you're willing to put yourself in that place. But you don't want to go there if you haven't practiced that. And this is what I guess I'm trying to say, is that if you're going to go about doing the Ironman as an event, then there's so many other events that you can go and practice these things and put yourself in situations that might challenge you a little bit more. And if you don't like that, then don't put yourself in those challenging situations, and step off to the side or start a little bit further to the back. I guess maybe I'm a little different than Verna in her approach, is that I try to get the best out of the I want the people to do the best that they possibly can, just like she does in a way, but there's a slightly more competitive streak, I might say, in me, and so I definitely try to put some at different times, or try and put people in outside of their comfort zone, just to sort of because you just never know when different things will happen on race day, and I do think it's pretty important. And again, this is sort of the way I used to train, is that I knew it was easy to take this sort of the outside approaching towards a buoy, but when you're surrounded by other really good swimmers, it's like sometimes I just made myself in my training get on the inside and get absolutely beaten up, because sometimes that does happen, and you've got absolutely no choice of that situation, and you want to learn how to respond to being pushed down and all these other types of things. Again, I hope I'm not trying to scare you, but all I'd say is I'm just saying you have to, it's important to get out there in the open water, familiarise yourself with the skills that are very different from pool swimming to the open water, and this is this is why choosing some events, or I often take people out for one-on-ones, and I'll get in the water with them in the open water, and I'll tell them to swim over the top of me. I'll get them to dunk me, and I'll do the same to them, and they soon quickly learn that it's actually not that bad. The wetsuit's so buoyant that they get up to the surface as long as they don't panic. I know we've done it, Paddy? So yeah, and so there's a lot to learn from going out and practicing. The pools and the squads that are around Auckland are generally fantastic, and look, if you can, again from a motivation perspective, I'd say join a swim squad and get amongst those. I mean, swimming can be, I think for a lot of people, and I can put my hand up and say, it can be kind of a little bit boring if you're just sort of in there by the pool by yourself going up and down. You know, there's no one really there to sort of challenge you to keep on going, whereas at least in the squad you're going to have 4 or 5, maybe up to 25 other people pushing you along to complete that training session that you're going through. You're going to find that most of those squads are going to start pretty early. So if you haven't, if you're sort of just starting on this journey and you haven't looked into this too much, then you'll probably find, you know, most squads are starting between 5:30 in the morning and 7. You will find some swim squads in the afternoon or the evening. There's usually seeded lanes, and there's usually 3 to 4 different speeds that you can you know, choose to go on, and you generally have to, you know, provide your own equipment. But I suppose the thing that you're going to, you know, if you choose to go into a squad, the thing that you probably won't get is a huge amount of technique help. Okay, is that you'll probably get 1 or 2 tips, but when you've got a large number of people in a squad situation, don't expect to go into a swim squad and expect to always see your swimming getting better. And this is again what Verna was saying earlier, is that now can be a perfect time for you to get your technique and your basics set up, so that by the time you want to get into those swim squads, then you can be a whole lot more effective in the water. So yeah, I guess just yeah, just be mindful of what those, you know, what you're going to expect in those swim squads, and yes, I think there are some great ones out there, and you will get some attention, but don't expect that attention always to be exactly around where you should be with your technique. Is there any questions on that so far? Yes.
Can I ask you about sighting? Like, I wear glasses,
Yeah.
and I can't wear contacts, and I have got, like, my swimming goggles are sort of aligned to my prescription, but you can't get them fully done. Every single event that I've ever done, I've ended up sighting to an incorrect buoy, and I swim really straight, and I swim straight out, but it's the wrong buoy, because I just haven't been able to see.
Yeah.
So, what, I mean, I'm not the only person in the room wearing glasses, I don't think, so, any tips?
Well, again, this is I'm colourblind, so swimming buoys have been a nightmare for me, and I've led a few races, and I'm stressed out the hell to know where I'm actually meant to be going. You know, you know, you see these buoys, can be buoys scattered amongst boats, or buoys, you know, just different coloured buoys. It's really hard. But this is where I'd say is that if you look at a course, you might not, I don't know if you're short or long-sighted, but you know, if you get an idea, can you see the blur of Rangitoto behind you, or can you see, you know, the lights or the masses of people in the direction that they're going, that you tend to either have to trust them, or you have to almost stop and spend a lot of time with your head up to make sure that you're heading in that right direction. And so don't think that sighting has to be just a single lift your head, am I going in the right direction, and not know if that was correct. Leave your head up, learn to swim, it's called polo, head up, chin on the water, keep on swimming, and know that you're taking that direction. I don't have solutions for, you know, I think you can purchase goggles. I think they're pretty expensive with prescription type goggles, but yeah, I don't know too much more about that, apart from either trusting the people or the, you know, where you're at in the event, or spending more time with your head up to make sure that you're heading in the right direction. Does that answer your question?
Yeah, it doesn't really, sort of.
Is there any other questions? Yeah?
With the trusting other people, with this Ironman, can you pretty much trust that if you're swimming in a group of people, you're all swimming in the right direction?
Yeah, you kind of, it's interesting. It's sort of, you'll find that when you're in the group, it sometimes moves like this as it's heading down the you know, down towards the buoy, and you're kind of going, you know, should I just keep on following them, or should I actually separate myself and move out? And I have to say, you're probably better off to stay in it, and you get dragged along in that mass, and it's quite a lot easier if they're, yeah, so it's pretty, like, I have to say that, I mean, you're choosing things like Ironman and 70.3, which are, you know, fantastic events, because their course management, you know, is really good. So you're seeing lots of buoys. you've got a generally lead kayaker that should be taking the first people in the right direction, and so as long as the first person's following the lead kayaker right, then hopefully everybody else should sort of follow. But you're going to find at different times, you can be blindsided, you can be heading this way and somebody hits you like this, and you go, where the heck did that person come from? What are they doing? And it does make you second guess your own direction. But just as I said before, don't feel like you have to just lift your head once, check that you're going in the right direction, leave your head up there, and learn to actually swim with your head up. Get be confident that you're heading in the right direction, and then put your head down and start swimming again. Yeah. And so this is I do quite a lot of polo drill, which is head up, chin on the water. You have to learn to kick pretty hard in order to do that, but it can be pretty helpful. Yeah. Yes.
Would you suggest training with fins or without?
Yeah. So I love using fins. I love using fins to help with technique, especially. But if I was looking at sort of my main sets, I would try to not use them, and then maybe at the back end of the set I maybe put them on if I notice things are kind of falling apart a little bit. And this is again what you probably see with a lot of triathletes. They'll tend to pull buoys on and fins or other objects to try and help with the buoyancy factor that they start to lack at the back end of a swim set. Usually just through I generally say their kick technique to start off with is really good, and then it just gets too tired and their body position drops down. So if you get the basics right of getting good body position, sometimes you just need to recheck yourself through the set, going, oh, what am I doing? Why am I starting to feel rubbish and really feeling low in the water? And it might just be that you need to do 25 metres of a drill or something like that to just reconnect that body position, and then get on with that set again, and that might be all you need. Yeah. Yeah. Other thing might be just pacing, is that if you start off too hard, just maybe pull it back a little bit. Yeah.
So if it's just fatigue that's affecting your position, is it best to just rest for a bit and then start up again, or?
Yeah. So I can tell you about maybe like I find these are pretty good for most triathletes, like a wetsuit type pants, which are give you additional buoyancy, and so a lot of triathletes will, again, what I say is they'll chuck on a pull buoy more often than say fins, but a pull buoy then usually inhibits the kick technique, whereas you chuck on something like this and you get a wetsuit buoyancy, so you come up, and then you can hopefully be a little bit more relaxed in the water to maintain the body position that you're needing. Yeah. So should you stop? At different times, yes. If it's gonna help you to continue on, maybe just increase the rest a little bit longer. Yeah. So both those options are good. Everyone's a little bit different. Depends where you're starting from. And to start off with, more rest is probably better, and then try and be more consistent with your times. Yeah. Any other questions on that? Okay, so the basic gear that you're going to need, goggles, obviously, swim cap. I generally would say use some fins, take some fins, so when you're at the pool, have a pair of fins. And I usually say short fins, so you know how you can get long fins and short fins, get the short ones. Long fins tend to, I think, create poor kicking technique. And it's more like like a diver. You see them with these really big leg movements, and you actually want to be a little bit smaller in that movement. So using a small fin is probably more helpful. The kickboard and the pull buoy, I'd say, would be your basics. The additional extras that you could have, and as you were saying before, if you want to learn about pacing and things like that, then things like a little tempo trainer is really quite helpful. These give you there's multiple settings, but if you understand a pace that you are trying to hold for, let's say 100 meters, it could give you a beep every 25. Let's say you tried to finish 25 meters in 30 seconds. It'll give you a beep every 30 seconds, so that you know what sort of pace that you're holding through your length, and that can be quite good if you don't understand how to use the clocks in the swimming pool. And just by having a little beep there, you'll know that if you're doing your first set of, 5 200s and you're miles ahead of your beep, then you're probably starting off too fast, and you probably just want to change it down and slow it down a little bit. Wetsuits. There's a lot of choices in regards to wetsuits, and it's sort of you're going to have a lot of choice in regards to the amount of money you want to spend on them as well. And the thing that I'd kind of look at with these is that wetsuits, you usually find that there's kind of, I don't know, there's 3 to 4 bands of prices that you can kind of purchase, and it doesn't necessarily mean that if you spend the $800 to $1,000 wetsuit that you're going to be a better swimmer. It's some of these wetsuits are, the things that you kind of look at are the paneling, the amount of buoyancy in those different panels that can help you as an individual swimmer. So, you could choose to actually look at a slightly cheaper type of wetsuit, and you could get exactly what you need. At the very low end, you'll probably find a lot of buoyancy, but maybe not a lot of flexibility. Okay, and I'd say that a lot of people will want the buoyancy, but they'll also want a little bit of flexibility. And so, if you can look into that sort of mid-range, and if you want to push yourself to the top range, but just look at some brands will definitely provide different. You get a completely different suit at the very top end, and you might actually, it might not be justified in you spending that money, and you could spend it on swim lessons. Look, there's some really good retailers around Auckland. There's Triathletes Corner down in St Heliers. There's Swim T3. Most of these guys are pretty experienced in actually fitting people to get the right wetsuits. But do check your wetsuit sizes. So you might often fit in a couple of different wetsuit bands, and you've got to make sure you get the right size. Most of them will often, or if you get that down to events, you'll often have the ability to trial these things before you buy them. So that can be a pretty good option if you can do that. Goggles, there's a few different choices, and I just bought a few along, and you can get your sort of standard type of pool goggle, or with a sort of you could either get them tinted or not tinted. It doesn't really matter in the pool, but usually got a slightly harder kind of lens, a little bit smaller. These aren't great for open water swimming. They're probably a little bit short in regards to the range of focus that you can kind of have with them. I suppose I don't really like them as much because they're a little bit harder. If you do get a kick in the head, then these really hurt. If you're just wearing a piece of plastic that's pretty close to your eye, even though this has a little bit of rubber just around the side, but you can get ones that are literally just plastic right on your eye, and so just be cautious of those. You can get like an open water type of goggle, so it's got a slightly wider profile, a nice sort of soft side to it, and again you can either get things that are tinted or not tinted. And again, you've just got to have a look at the events that you're going to do, and the timing of those events to know what sort of goggles you want to. It's like having a bag of golf clubs. You might choose out pull out your tinted ones for a race in the late evening that you're going to be swimming back into a setting sun, or if you're going swimming early in the morning, it might be slightly darker in the morning, but then as the sun comes up, you can be looking straight into it. The tinted goggle can be pretty helpful. But then you start off and maybe a race, and it's it's going to be pretty grey all day, and you might want to something that's not tinted but is actually going to light up the way for you a little bit more. And having a couple of pairs of goggles is pretty helpful. And I have to say, if you can try and keep one pair for your chlorine, swimming, they get a beautiful haze over them that you can't see anything. And having either one or two really good pairs that you only pull out for your open water swimming, or a really good pair that you only pull out for your racing. And I'll tell you what, when I turn up to a race and you put on your race goggles and you just have this clarity of sight, it's just gold, versus having something that you're kind of really struggling to see things with. So maybe you need a new pair of goggles as well. Okay, any questions on the equipment? No? Event day preparation. So the reason I like swimming in the morning, and I definitely recommend people to swim in the morning is that most of the events that you're going to turn up and do are going to start in the morning. And if you don't know how to operate in the morning, then I believe that you're taking on this journey, and you want to do the best that you can. So every day you turn up and you go swimming in the morning, you're actually setting yourself up to learn about how you're going to perform on your race day, when you have to get up a little bit earlier. You have to maybe look at what you're going to eat and your nutrition prior to getting into the swim. And if you're doing, as you get into summer and you're doing maybe some brick sessions that are slightly longer, then you're really having to think about, okay, well, it is like setting yourself up for a race day, getting up at maybe 5:30, having your race day breakfast, or what would be your race day breakfast, and going through those processes. Because you want to know by the time you jump in the water how your tummy is. You don't want to be swimming along and feeling a little bit sick about it. So how much you can eat, and I suppose from a time perspective, how much earlier before you actually get in the water that you want to eat. Nikki will probably go into this a little bit more, but I can say that when I was competitive swimming, I felt like I got more and more tolerant of the food that I would eat closer to training, and so I could get away with these quite short windows that probably aren't recommended of eating before swimming. But I did feel as if my body just got a little bit more used to that. But again, I'd say practice what you're going to do on race day, but you've got now a number of months to start practicing that in regards to your nutrition prior to your swimming. Warm up. Okay, so the first thing that you're going to do when you get into the pool and a training session that you're going to do, they're going to tell you to do a warm up, and that warm up might be 400 meters, or it could be something like that. And then they'll have a warm up set, which might be, I want you to do 850s, and I want you to build your pace through these 850s. And why do they do this? It's doing this to set you up for your main set, which is something that's meant to be there to challenge you a little bit more, right? So why is it when people turn up to a race, their warm-up is putting on their wetsuit and putting on their jacket, because it's warmer there than it is in the water? And then they expect their body to operate as soon as they get in the water and swim. And as Verna said, so many people suffer from anxiety and panic attacks in the water, and they never experience it in their training. And I think that the main reason that this happens is because they just don't warm up. And so when you've got 10 to 15 minutes prior to an event to get in the water and do a warm-up, just like you would in your swim squad. And you'd go about, I'll give you an idea of what this is. It's like what I tell my athletes to do. You've got 15 minutes before you start, I tell them to have a gel, usually. Okay, they've got 5 minutes, they try and get in, they just swim comfortably, just get into a nice rhythm, get your breathing under control, okay? And when you do that, you're starting to just, again, get comfortable with your environment. Then I get them to do some kicking, okay? So they're in the open water prior to their race, kicking. Hands out in front, kicking, all right? And the reason I get them to do that is it starts to bring up their heart rate, okay? And when their heart rate starts to work, their body starts to start to prepare, I think, for what they're about to ask it to do. So they'll kick maybe for, just could be 10, 20 seconds, and then they'll take 20 to 30 strokes freestyle. Then I'll get them to do some little sprints, maybe 15 to 20 meters, really fast sprints, like sprinting off the line, okay? Stop, turn around, do it again, do it again, do it again. These are really short. By the end of that, your heart rate will be in your mouth, okay? And then go back and start to swim easy again. But I feel like by doing that, you're setting yourself up to, when that cannon goes off, to be able to swim, and you kind of semi-prepared your body to actually get into a rhythm a whole lot faster, rather than having that cannon go off and then going through exactly that process. So you start to swim, you have all these people around you, your heart rate starts building, and then that potential anxiety and all those stresses start coming out. Alright? So I can't stress enough, if there's one thing that you walk away with, warm up, warm up, warm up, warm up. Yeah.
So at the 7.3 in Taupo last year, they didn't let us in the water for a warm-up. Is it likely to happen at IRONMAN again this year? Because there was, a lot of us didn't expect that.
Yeah.
And then
So there's still ways to warm up, whether you're in the water or out of the water. And I gave my athletes instructions on how to warm up if they weren't able to get in the water, so they knew how to do that. So there's ways, you know, just as we were talking about before about breathing. Now you need to get your breathing a little bit more rapid, you know, to you know, before you're going to get in the water if you can't warm up. I don't think there'll be an issue at Taupo because the issue I think is more in Auckland. You could probably say.
No, this is the Taupo half, sorry.
Oh no. Well, I know everyone. I know. I mean, by the time they let you in the water, for you to get there to the start line, there's enough time to go through this routine. Okay, it might not be 5 minutes, but you can definitely get enough time to get some kick-ins, some sprints, get your heart rate up, so that it's not just a...
Oh, okay, so do it on the way out to the start line?
Yeah.
Oh, okay, right.
Yeah. But if you've got more time, then turn up to the start line a little bit earlier and get in before they sort of stop you, and then get out again. And have your person standing there with your bag and things just to kind of keep you warm. Yeah. Yeah. So look, I suppose that the key things I was going to say is just utilise the events around Auckland just to practice what you're going to do come race day, and I'm sure you're going to find that you're a little bit more comfortable on the race day. There's a couple of little things. I've got a little fill-in form over there, so if you do want to fill in your details, I'm going to give away 3 swim lessons for people that are here today, so if you want to drop in your details. I've got information. I'll also email you if you do put down your details. I'll give you $20 off your first 2 lessons, and there's information on my website about things like swim stroke analysis. So this is where we go in under the water and start to kind of look at things in a little bit more detail. And again, at the top of my website, you can enter the draw to win a swim stroke analysis. So again, there's things there for you. And I've got training sessions and stuff that could be quite relevant for a number of you come the summer, both in the open water as well. Okay, is there any final questions?
Yeah, just a quick one about coaching. I've got trouble getting coaches who can go to the pools because the pools don't want outside coaches coming in. Is there a way of... I was asking a lot of these places if they had approved swim coaches, but a lot of them don't, like, you know, West Wave, Henderson, that sort of thing. Are most of the coaches able to come in and give you lessons at the public pools or
no?
not?
No, I mean, again, it's just business, you know.
I see
it's
why,
like,
but,
you know, they run swim schools, they have swim teachers that are available, so it's just the way it is.
Just get a normal swim teacher rather than a tri.
I mean, you could. I mean, look. I mean, I operate out of a gym, which they're luckily, you know, let me bring in people from the tri community into the pool, so you don't need to be a member there. So you can come in and get, I guess, specific coaching. So it's just a matter of finding the right people, or finding somebody that's associated with the pool that you want to be taught by, and finding that you know, going to help you in the information, that will give you the information that you want. Cool, thank you.
We will have a longer question and answers general for everybody afterwards. Thank you, Andrew. Thanks very much.